it's been more than 2 weeks since the Senate acquitted President Trump, and since then, a lot has happened. I'm not going to read the entire list, but in the 18 days since the president was acquitted, he has vowed revenge on his perceived enemies. He has attacked senators who voted against him. He has fired witnesses who testified, interfered in the sentencing of Roger Stone, attacked jurors as well as a federal judge. He has continued attacks on justice matters, despite threats from his own attorney general. He has ousted a top Pentagon official and put a loyalist with no intelligence experience at the top of the U.S. intelligence community. So that brings us to your weekend presidential brief with CNN national security analyst Sam Vinograd. It's a segment that we bring to you every weekend with the most pressing national security issues that the president is going to be facing this week. Now, Sam, we should note, also helped prepare the daily presidential brief for President Obama. Sam, let's start there. Quite an upheaval at the top of the intelligence community this week. We have a man, Richard Grenell, the ambassador to Germany, who's coming in to be the acting director of national intelligence with essentially no intelligence experience.
Alex, every national security meeting I was in started with an intel briefing. That's because Obama considered intelligence a core input to policymaking. President Trump, however, is trying to transform the intelligence community into his personal PR machine. He wants it to push out content that he views as politically helpful. And appointing Grenell is a strategic move in this regard. He lacks the experience to do his statutorily defined duties, but he's well positioned to advance the president's pet projects. Absent intelligence experience, he's going to have a really tough time knowing how to integrate intelligence from across the community. But he doesn't need intel experience to, for example, block and tackle content that the president doesn't want getting out, or to clean house of officials that he views as problematic in terms of their briefings. This is a very dangerous description for Director of National Intelligence.
And the man that Rick Grenell is taking over for, Joseph Maguire, the former acting Director of National Intelligence, we have reporting that the president was irate with him because of this briefing that we were just talking about with Jeremy, where Shelby Pearson, the top elections official in the intelligence community, said that the Russians had a preference for Trump. Now, as you just heard from Jeremy, we're being told by a number of officials that she may have gotten ahead of her skis. Is it possible, knowing what you do about how these briefings take place, is it possible that she overstated things?
It's possible, but it would be highly unlikely. These briefings don't just appear out of thin air. A sensitive briefing like this would go through multiple layers of clearance within the intelligence community, and every talking point would be reviewed to ensure that it was accurate. Now, remember, because the original assessment on 2016 noted that Russia preferred Trump as a candidate, any updated assessment would likely review that analysis and see whether it's still stuck. So it seems improbable that the briefing itself would have been divorced from what the actual intelligence community leadership says. At the same time, I can't think of a single scenario where a sensitive briefing would have gone to Congress without the National Security Advisor reviewing it. It just doesn't happen. So O'Brien is either grossly negligent and didn't read the intelligence, he's lying about what it said, or a senior expert on election security made a gross overstatement. And the key point here is we're playing a guessing game. We don't need to be. The DNI could reschedule their worldwide threat briefing and address this head on.
Right, and that's a very good point. We don't know if or when this usually annual worldwide threat briefing will actually take place. We did hear from Bernie Sanders just before the weekend started saying that he had been briefed by intelligence officials that the Russians were also working to benefit his campaign. He immediately came out and acknowledged that once the story broke. And said that he wouldn't tolerate it as president. But we're not exactly hearing the same thing from President Trump, are we?
There's one word that Trump hasn't said on Russian attacks, which is stop. He's done exactly the opposite. During an election year, there has to be a strategy in place, law enforcement, intelligence community, diplomatic corps, to try to identify and mitigate Russian attacks, both hacking and information warfare. Any threat matrix at this point has to include President Trump. He is accelerating Russia's information warfare campaign against our country by spreading conspiracy theories about who's attacking whom, by falsely claiming that the election is going to be rigged. And so at this point, while rank and file officials are likely working hard to keep us safe, President Trump is knowingly adding to the election attacks that President Putin is so focused on.
And we know that Russia is going to be doing something in the 2020 election. And here we have the top 2 intelligence officials losing their jobs. Total upheaval at the top of the intelligence community. Sam Vinograd.
It's not a good look in an election year.